Welcome to X-Men Evolution, episode 33 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. I'm JC, and Rod, it's literally less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's all people are going to hear for this in the next week, is just how excited we are for March 20th. So
yeah, and it's the last recording of this for us because we're doing 2 of them right now. So the next time we meet up, it's going to be for the actual show.
It's wild.
Please don't suck. And I'm Rod. I'm hopeful for Storm. That's my whole personality for the next few weeks. Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men animated series building up to the release of X-Men 97, which we now know is coming to Disney Plus in less than 2 weeks, March 20th.
With 2 episodes.
Yeah. 2 episodes.
Yeah, that caught me off guard. Even better, that's when I'm flying back from San Francisco. Great.
And it makes sense. It's kind of funny because it was like neither our estimates. I was like, what if they do all of them, or 3 or 4? And you're like, well, if they do none, and they're like, we'll do 2. They overheard this.
It's all out of spite.
But until that happens, we will be covering other X-Men animated series like this one, X-Men Evolution. That does mean we'll be taking a break from Evolution during the release of 97, so we can recap those on their release week.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started over 20 years ago. There are going to be spoilers. If you don't want to spoil it for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and then come back. We are currently not sponsored or affiliated with Marvel, Marvel Animation, Disney, Disney Plus, or Hulu in any way, shape, or form.
When we do the 97 show, we'll have to say, like, there'll be spoilers for a show that started 20 hours ago.
20 minutes ago, depending on the day.
Yeah. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, X, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast services.
Now, on to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 3, titled Mainstream. It aired on September 28th of 2002. Currently sits at a 7.3 star rating on IMDb.
Took a ratings drop from the original few episodes.
Well, the previous episodes were also some of the highest rated ones of the entire series. So I feel like a 7.3 is still pretty respectable.
Yeah, they were pretty. I was gonna say those are pretty heavy episodes because of all the drama. This episode though was like just heavy on topic.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. So jumping in, it starts off with the exterior of the mansion. It's destroyed. It's foggy. All the destruction that happened, they still have security cameras that are working.
Yeah, well, there's at least one we saw.
Yeah, there's one that pops up, and you see some shadowy people who are walking by.
I was actually more surprised that children were still living in there than the security cameras.
Charles doesn't do a great job of taking care of these kids. Let's be real.
I will give it. We'll talk about this as the episode goes along, but I like how more of the characters in this episode and the next one are kind of being more realistic to the real world of like what's been going on. Like it wasn't completely ignored.
Yeah. This show, there actually were, stakes. Like this wasn't, it was blown up and fixed the next week. Like you see in a lot of other cartoons, X-Men cartoons included. It was, no, they are literally living in essentially a bunker underneath this building right now. So you see tired Kitty wandering through the basement. Up top, you see some students with Leatherman jackets, and they have monster masks on them too.
I didn't know that those were masks, and I was like, I checked the text message, and I was like, okay, John's in charge of this one because I don't know whatever group of characters that's supposed to be. It's not the Morlocks.
Right. So Kitty is eating what is literally the grossest looking pizza I've ever seen in cartoon history.
My note was just, who drinks milk with pizza?
I've heard of it.
Really?
I don't condone it, but I've heard of it. But it also was from the weird milk carton that you pointed out and got yelled at for online. So
at least, at this point, I'm going to commend them for just committing to it. You make a weird decision, you lean in.
Okay, honestly, like whoever is listening and commenting and stuff, if you could identify like a year and a brand that actually use this kind of milk carton, please let us know because we cannot find something that looks like this. I mean, this is based off of 2000-ish era, so I was like, our memories weren't that shot. We did drink a lot during college, but so there's a Nightcrawler jump scare. He catches Kitty drinking from the carton and then proceeds to challenge her because she's like, I was going to finish. She's like, all right, there's like a half gallon. Why don't you finish all of it? And I can't help but think of all the videos online from like the early YouTube era where people would chug a half gallon or gallon of milk and then proceed to vomit all over the place.
I had a roommate that would drink an entire gallon of milk in a day, but not throw up. Like it was just, he had a beer belly from, he didn't drink alcohol. He just had a beer belly from whole milk. Drinking like that. Maybe Kitty's like that. I don't know.
Right. But I think he was saying like chug it.
Yeah. Although I I do kind of appreciate Nightcrawler's like old school, like, you know, you get caught as a kid smoking a cigarette, so your dad makes you smoke a whole pack kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of gross if you're sharing, you know, space with like non-relatives or partners, and you're like, you're some girl.
If you don't make out on the regular, it's not okay to drink from the carton. Yeah. So Kitty ends up seeing over Kurt's shoulder, sees there are people on camera, points it out, and then like they disappear off camera for that perfect half second where Nightcrawler doesn't believe them, but then they pop back up on camera and they're like, all right, cool, let's go up and take care of this. They take the elevator, they get off, and then there's like really like nasty graffiti on the wall with like, you know, muty written and stuff like that. And they don't recognize the three students and don't even recognize that they are students at that point. So
yeah, I was right there with them. I was like, oh, Lord, okay, what aliens are now part of this? I don't know.
So that's our mini cliffhanger, goes into the animated intro. We come back, and then there's a shot of the green mask. And the green mask, I think, is a reference.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
It looks like Fin Fang Foom, who we've talked about in the past.
From like the Shang-Chi series or something?
Would it be Iron Man would be more of where Finn has been from? The most recent time I read that character was in X-Men, actually, of all things. I think I had mentioned before, Iceman basically turns himself into an ice kaiju to fight Finn.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's right. Your favorite.
Yep. Nightcrawler jumps in, a fight breaks out, and you get a pretty quick reveal that it was high school kids.
It's a Scooby reveal. I thought it was going to be something different because my note here was that they try to fight, but the monsters aren't really fighting back. Like, they're defending themselves. I don't know. They weren't doing any too much, you know, to be offensive.
Obviously, I recognize the Fin Fang Foom mask, so like right off the bat, that's a thing. The Letterman jackets, and there's also like a lack of animation of their faces. And in this show in particular, we saw like even unnamed background characters are still like fully designed and stuff. So I kind of just picked up on it's got to be like a plastic mask or something, which is why like there's not emotion showing through and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yep. As they're, you know, revealed, Kitty sees the spray can, realizes they were a part of the group who's been defacing the ruins of the Institute. They start to run off and they start chanting that Bayville doesn't want you.
So all the stuff we were speculating before about mutants in public school actually is happening.
Like to a T.
Yeah. Except for, or maybe not except for, maybe I just forgot how it felt to be like a teenager, like feeling invincible.
I mean, that was more than half your life ago, Rod.
Yeah.
For both of us, let's be clear. Not being ageist to you, but that was more than half our lives ago.
Because if I just saw the stuff I saw on the news with the Sentinel, like, you know, Jean and Nightcrawler and like optic blasts and all this stuff, I don't think I would like venture into the ruins of their home on a nightly basis.
Yeah, I get like people dropping like comments when they're in a big group, and it's like kind of like you could get away with it because they don't know it's you. Flash forward to what Homelander does in The Boys, and people will start rethinking that. But yeah, like going to their home and like you're kind of playing with fire there.
Yeah, like I said, I guess that's just being a teenager and feeling invincible. You know, I guess maybe the equivalent for us is we would like drive really idiotically around like sharp turns and through cornfields and shit. So
I didn't have cornfields.
That's all we had.
We see the next morning where Rain and
I was gonna ask if you caught that.
Yeah. So Rain is already gone, and Jubilee is being picked up by their father in front of Professor X and Wolverine. And there's something about the way this version of X is written, man. Like, he's the one I'm having a very tough time getting behind.
Because he said, like,
he's understood. Like, yeah, I would do the same. I was supposed to keep their kids safe. He's like, he's almost lackadaisical about it. He's like, yeah, I get it. It's like, he's not even like mad.
Maybe Xavier's microdosing in this universe.
I was going to say, is he high? Maybe like, he's just so okay with everything right now.
Maybe, like, not completely, but just enough to take the edge off. Otherwise, he would just be like Xavier and Logan.
It's to stop him from making everybody's brain explode.
Yeah, you never know. But I guess they just kind of quietly retconned Rain Ronnie's name pronunciation.
I mean, we know that Steven was the director on the first two seasons. It was not a director on the third season. So different director was just like, fuck it, don't care.
But I do appreciate this discussion of like, this place is unsafe. Yes. Okay. All that makes sense.
Yeah. Wolverine is blaming himself for the whole Mystique thing, saying he couldn't recognize her scent. And then Xavier gives us part of the answer that you were looking for, which is when did it happen? And you were spot on. It was earlier than I thought it did. It happened at Wanda's visitor room.
Okay, so that's why I was wondering what he meant by the hospital. So like when he went to go pick her up the very first time, that's when the swap happened.
Right, like he must have been there for a minute, and then when Mystique went back in, when she left Wanda with Agatha, that's what she went to do, was go snag Xavier.
Oh, okay, so going back in, so that was purposeful. That's so funny, because I just chalked that up as an error.
I thought it was her killing a few guards or something.
Right. But
or like deleting footage or something, you know?
But that was even earlier than I thought. That was like the very beginning of the episode.
Right, so that explains all the stuff that we were talking about at the beginning of the following episode, and also explains why he was so quick to jump to doing the allegiance with the Brotherhood, because he was already swapped at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Logan is right, like he should have sniffed her out. I guess that's just something we're supposed to write off, that he has guard down. It's something he had to activate, maybe?
Well, they also said, like, she now has the ability to conceal herself completely. So I got that as the end of season 1 power-up that happens to her. She's able to affect her scent and is able to do something with the polymorphing or whatever the matter control on her body that's also preventing detection from the telepathy.
Yeah, yep. And so she's kind of like the Super Scroll thing, right? Like she got the powers and stuff too. Right.
Jumping downstairs, there's a psychic announcement that the young ones get to eat first and that everybody else gets to go to sub-level 7. And I don't know what the significance of sub-level 7 was, except they made sure to say it.
Yeah. Why was Scott covered in fur? Did you catch that?
So they shared a room, and I think it was just to imply that they were like stuck in very close quarters.
Oh, okay. I'm imagining blue fur from Kurt being similar to pets. Like this entire house is covered in her. So, and Lucy, I'm pointing at my cat. I forget. Nobody can see this video. I'm pointing
no
at my
video.
Cat.
Even though we have a video, there's no video. And then Rogue mentions that stuff is too crowded down there. And you see Jamie has like multiplied into like 7 versions of himself. That's the easiest fix ever, is to tell Jamie to stop being a dumbass.
Right. Or tell him to get picked up by his parents.
Yeah, actually, he's the only one there. He's like, I gotta go, guys. Like, okay, bye.
Yeah,
you've done nothing yet. You've literally only been a liability.
You know, he's literally only taken up space.
He has taken up space, taken up 7 times more space, and then was the one who was the closest to being arrested by the cops.
Yeah.
That's all he's done. It's a shame because I like Jamie as a character outside of this show. He's the one, him and Jubilee, like these versions of them, I just do not give a shit about, if I'm being totally honest.
There's not a lot to, I think after the Joyride episode, we didn't really, it may be one more, we didn't really see a lot more from Jubilee either.
The Joyride was really her like spotlight episode. Go into like a conference table area in sub-level 7 apparently, and Xavier is letting them know that the school board is allowing them to come into class today just with no powers. And like, cool, thanks. That's exactly what I want to do, is I want to go in for one day before I then get expelled from the school.
Yeah, before they vote on the ban or not.
Yeah, that night they need to have a vote to see if they're going to ban them. And he's like, be on your best behavior. It's like, go fuck yourself, dude.
I was going to say, this makes sense from what he says of like, I want you to go be like good examples to prove them wrong. But it seems like a little late to prepare them for this. Like this should have been something a little bit earlier, unless all that stuff that happened was literally like the night before. Right. It doesn't feel like that.
I also don't feel like the school would be like, no, you're literally a concealed weapon and we're okay with you being in. Just don't use your concealed weapon right now. Yeah.
And they don't even have a concept of what that is, because obviously some of the kids at school realize that there's some like telepathy stuff happening, because you can't see that.
Right. Yeah, telepathy and telekinesis you really can't see. You just see the end results of it, you know. Kitty at first seems like afraid to return. Like she's just like not cool with it. And then Xavier's like, well, you know, this is that opportunity for you guys to be accepted for all that you are. And it's like, I don't know. There's something about this Xavier speech that I'm like,
it skips a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Like, there's no baby steps in there.
Yeah, like maybe invite people out for a football game first before being in class next to them, you know?
Yeah.
Spike notices like they're still referred to essentially as monsters and is pissed about that. Xavier saying, you know, don't give them a reason to fear you. And Kurt realizes he hasn't been ID'd yet because his public appearance was him in blue fuzzy mode, whereas the kids in school have only seen him in human mode aside from his girlfriend.
Yeah, and the other kids make a good point because he's like, yeah, I can still hide as human. And they're like, but they're going to figure out that you live here.
Yeah. I mean, kids are dumb. They're not that dumb, dude. They're going to start to put 2 and 2 together there.
And that's also assuming that your girlfriend hasn't like said something, not maliciously, but just not known that she wasn't supposed to say something. I did like what Xavier said at the end that made sense. He was like, make them look you in the face when they vote, just to make it real. So like, if you're going to be flagrant about something, like do it with your whole chest to my face.
So they get to school and there's already a commotion at the entrance to it. Evan's very on edge. You see Kurt is hanging back and not walking in next to them. And Taryn just won't even talk to Scott. Like, she just like totally cold shoulders him and stuff.
I put here that they broke up essentially. I mean,
yeah. Quick side note there, though. Credit to X-Men Evolution Wiki on Fandom. They name drop one of the characters whose name is Ellen DeGen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's nothing about this character online other than that is their name. It's DE''Gen.
Somebody just like Ellen DeGeneres?
I think that's what it is, man.
Okay.
Yep. We got a character name drop in the next episode that's even more wild, so we'll get to those, but yeah.
In this scene, I feel like it had to be on purpose. It's like, it was not even thinly veiled. It felt like very much like Ruby Bridges attending a mixed school for the first time. They made sure that Evan specifically had a problem with it because he's like living the life almost kind of twice.
Right.
You know, it's a strong choice. So like, kudos to whoever made the decisions for this scene to be displayed this way, because you know, these forums that we talk about on Facebook and stuff, that is not so much now, but a lot before, people like arguing like, this is not what X-Men's about. It's like, this is always what X-Men's been about in every iteration. Yep. There's never been an iteration that hasn't been about this.
You're right. Even if you want to go back to the argument that the original choice of mutant powers was to stop needing to come up with different origin stories that were not copycats of each other, it still doesn't change that that's what they became in their earliest time frame, and it still was combating a bigotry. So regardless of what was that the original intent of Stan, maybe not, if that's what it became and has been for the vast majority, let's call it conservatively, 55 of their 60 years of existence, you know.
There's a clip that I'm never going to be able to find again that was on TikTok, and I'm sure someone else has seen it, of Stan at a convention. Right. And he brings up both those points. He's like, it was for me to like not have to keep coming up with origin stories, but I also felt like it was natural for them to, I'm paraphrasing obviously, being born with a mutant origin story naturally comes with the prejudice story. It's just part of it. So
it's kind of like, people always wondered about Spider-Man because it was never clear how he fell. Like, was he lab made like a Captain America, or was he born this way because he always hit his face? And it's not quite the Incredible Hulk because Hulk is just so big and a destructive force of nature. So it's like he's almost too big to be a mutant in certain ways with the way that he just unleashes. So yeah, it's you have a little bit of a toned down version of the Hulk in that you're still looking these people in the face and still calling them a mutie and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think the only thing that's maybe not super parallel is they kind of combined experiences, at least in this case. Because with Kurt like hanging back, that kind of adds in this like, you know, kind of like closeted narrative, not being able to come out and stuff. And it's just interesting. They just kind of like, it's all of the things. So
I mean, there's absolutely instances where people, when we've been in the closet, like, you're nervous to speak up because there's that fear that if you speak up when defending somebody, that they're going to figure you out and you're going to inadvertently out yourself before you were ready for it. And I mean, that's hopefully something that isn't as prevalent, but 2000, that was absolutely the vibe back then.
I mean, you say that. I follow a trans creator on TikTok, and he was saying like he's a super, like, by, you know, societal standards, like very masculine, works in like some sort of like industrial thing or whatever industry he works in happens to be a super conservative environment that is. And he said that he's just used to a lot of like phobic in general conversation happening in his workplace, and he was just like waiting for the day. Like, he always knew he was going to be let go because they were going to find out. And the only grace he got was that he happened to be on vacation when it got found out. so that he could like kind of quit. And I guess the good news is like the TikTok stuff kind of took off for him, so I think it like maybe replaced his work. I don't know if I have that story completely right, but like that sucks. Like you said, like we're in 2023, 2024, because it didn't affect anybody for however long he worked there.
And it never does. That's going back to the steps. We also see interaction between Duncan and Jean, and he comes up kind of like very happy-go-lucky about this, where she's already like pretty dour, and he's like, immediately he fucks it up because he's thinking of it from the wrong perspective and then a selfish perspective on top of that, because he refers to it as Jean's problem, and then she's like, what? And then he's like, yeah, no, but it's good because we could like use this and, you know, around finals and stuff like that. Like, yeah, dude, I'm sure people are going to believe you went from barely staying on your, you know, your credits for academia or to stay on the football team, and they're going to believe you're getting straight A's right now. Not so much.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's other instances that this parallels, but to me, at least, it very much gave that energy of like, I have an Asian friend, I have a black friend, you know, that kind of energy of like, oh, hey, no, we're good. Because you'll be my like permission for fill in the blank. Right.
Oh, I didn't even think of the permission part of it. That just like it was already gross on two levels. Yeah. You just added the third tier for it.
Right. Because he's thinking like, well, he didn't have to do anything else because they were already together before everybody found out. I don't know. Yeah. And then he fucked it up. And luckily,
like he's smart. Saving her by staying in a relationship with her. Yeah. So she immediately breaks up with him. You see a quick shot from the perspective of Principal Kelly in his car watching, which is just creepy for a principal to be doing. I feel like he should already be in the school at that point.
Yeah, especially if a majority of the students are already there, either
are in school. Yeah,
either inside or swarmed outside, or maybe that's why he was outside. He's like, I don't want any of this heat. He's just waiting.
I don't want to be in those pictures that are going to surface 40 years from now.
Exactly, which is my working theory of why they don't want to teach that in schools, because someone's grandpa is in those pictures.
I think we've said this before. Isn't the dude who owns the Dallas Cowboys in one of those pictures?
Probably. That tracks for me.
Jerry Jones, I want to say.
We probably have more of a chance of being correct about that than not.
And then you get a quick moment between Jean and Scott where she like apologizes and thanks Scott for kind of like being there as a backup and walks off. And then you see like for the first time in many, many episodes, Scott is happy for a half a second.
Yeah. And they're holding hands.
Yeah. Jump over. We see Wolverine on a motorcycle. And somebody starts pulling up, and I was like, "Is it going to be? It's not going to be Sabretooth because he would have smelled him, right?"
Right.
Which I am sad. Quick tangent that we did lose audio on at least one of our Sabretooth Wolverine love song videos.
Oh, did we on TikTok?
I think we lost one on TikTok.
Makes sense. At least it's one, and not my personal account got 190 views. So.
Universal Music Group loving Rod's TikTok.
Yeah. They're also taking down non-Universal Music.
That doesn't seem right.
I'm sure it has something to do with an overcorrection of content ID.
Platforms never do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're perfect.
So Colossus pulls up next to him, and I still love how they animate Colossus, like his power with the transformation and stuff like that. Like just kind of like it builds on it. It like unravels in a way.
Yeah. I don't know if I've seen Colossus portrayed in a way where he does partial transformation for extended periods of time, because when he just did his hand, I was like, oh, is this somebody different? I mean, I think it's Colossus because that's what established, but it just stayed there instead of him like going full body. But then he just like fucks up a truck to get Wolverine.
Yeah, he jackknifes a truck just for the fuck of it. And then Wolverine does what I can only do in Fortnite, which is he makes a motorcycle jump over a truck.
Yeah.
There was no ramp. That should not have happened.
Pop extreme wheelie.
Dude, that's not even a wheelie. Like that's like the most aggressive bunny hop in history. Over at the Brotherhood house, they're teasing Lance about Kitty, and they're going hard on it, man. They literally start like just repeatedly saying, "Here, Kitty, Kitty," like 7 times. Yeah. It was like legit creepy.
You're like, this is a guy that can cause earthquakes. You want to mess with him, but I guess they're just, I don't know, idiots and been around each other long enough. They know that they can give each other shit.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, these are the kids who are like punching each other in the face for fun. Like they're not bright.
Yeah.
So he starts to quake the house, and then the door knocks, and I don't know if you heard it, but there was like a quick throwaway line from like, I want to say it was Toad, who was like, "Is she here?" Like they thought the knocks at the door was actually Kitty for like a hot second.
Oh, I thought he meant Mystique.
Oh no, I totally read that as like they thought Kitty was knocking.
That'd be funny, yeah.
Yep.
Instead of just phasing through the wall.
But instead of Kitty, it's Principal Kelly, who invites them back to school. And they're like, why would we go back to school? And Kelly kind of like plants a seed of, well, you know, they're not going to bother you. They're probably all scared of you, which is like, if you want to get a bully interested in anything, that's your way to pull that off.
Yeah, and Principal Kelly in this, now I think he's further confused me of if he's somebody else or he's just like a raging bigot and this has activated it.
Well, he's definitely the raging bigot, but now I'm still not confused, or I'm not sure if he's somebody else. And thankfully, and also anybody who's listening to this episode, maybe you missed an earlier one, we are watching this show for the first time ever, so we don't know how that's going to play out, so please don't spoil that in the comments for us if you've listened to this.
Yeah. Yeah, because he doesn't do what Mystique did in the past, and like he's moving pieces, but it's kind of like it broad strokes, you know, like he's just trying to get like a bunch of troublemakers together,
right?
And it's not necessarily for like his team. He's just like, go over there and hang out with these people, and then go over here, and I don't know,
and maybe this was just like the seed that was planted that never was going to pay off. When an earlier episode, I think at the start of season 2. When Xavier tried to mind wipe him and couldn't do it.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And that's why I still am like, is this sinister? Because how can he not have, like, how could he resist Charles, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then there is a fantastic quote to end that scene where Toad says, it's like my mom always told me, if you can't be cool, be feared.
I mean, I guess that kind of tracks. I think my mom said something similar to me. Like on camera, actually. I have a video.
I just want to have a conversation with your mom about you and your brother's love of X-Men and see what comes out of it.
She probably wouldn't know that much about that, but like I think there's a video. I think this is one that pops up when you go to my personal channel. My mom's like, never hurt or beat anyone else unless they hit you first, then you beat back.
Your mom is awesome.
And then my dad's on the corner like, cultures are so different, huh?
Back in school, we see Amanda coming up to Kurt and checking to see if everything is fine. I guess she can't call him because all the phones have been demolished at the mansion. I think that's reasonable in 2000. Not everybody had a cell phone, you know?
Yeah, I started college in 2001, and my only cell phone was for like either emergencies or calling back to my hometown. But my dorm had the landline for both me and my roommate. And the answering machine. So yeah, that makes sense. I forgot that she knew that he was furry.
Right.
So when she like grabbed his arm and stuff, like, oh no.
And then he immediately goes into like, no, everything's good. And like, as they're walking by people, he's like, hey, how are you doing? He has like the fakest friendship voice I've ever heard from anybody at that point.
Was it like the Steve Buscemi is a high school student's like,
hello, my fellow kids?
Yeah. Or Drew Barrymore in Never Been Kissed.
Still haven't watched that one.
I've only seen Not Another Teen Movie. And then clips from Drew Barrymore, and it's surprisingly not that much of a parody.
No, it's just that the actress is like 20 years older than Drew was when she shot that or something.
Yeah, but at the same time, Drew also did not look like a high school student, even by standards of the older people playing high school students in the movie. Yeah, it's not like Euphoria where they're all like at least somewhat close to the age, so it's not horribly illegal. But he mentions to Amanda that he's not ready yet. And she's like, you're still hiding. So she's like, she wants him to like come out about it. Like, I think she probably feels like if there's a time to do it, this is the best time. Meanwhile, Kurt is like, this is the worst time. Yeah, I kind of see the conundrum there because he's scared, obviously, and then he spent his whole life not being able to hide or not being able to fit in. But her point is, you have that, you deserve the right to kind of come out whenever you want to, except right now, all your closest friends don't.
Right.
And so that's the decision you have to make, is like, what person do you want to be in this situation?
Well, and then there's the phrase that does get used a lot in here. You know, obviously, like we mentioned, people have used freak and stuff like that, which Kitty kind of has dropped. But like, Kurt's like, I can't give up being normal. And to your point, compared to the others, he's going to stand out the most just because his powers don't turn off. Even Evan with spiking out and stuff like that, he's able to put them away. Versus Kurt is still blue on any given moment. So
yeah, so it's a nuanced conversation there, but she has a really good point. She's like, your friends need you now.
Yeah, aren't you going to stand by your friends? Speaking of standing by his friends, Duncan is outside fighting Scott blaming Scott for being the reason why Jean dumped him, because that's what Duncan would legitimately think. Drops the beauty phrase on him. And then Scott, to his credit, blind fights Duncan and these other two dudes.
Yeah, and I remember Duncan even saying, like, I'm going to force you to use your power so you get expelled. This has... So, way back, like, maybe a year after college, my roommate at the time was going through police academy, so he was, like, on meter maid duty, like, little things, like jaywalking and stuff. It has the same energy of something that he was always annoyed by with people, like, who are pedestrians were like, I'm going to cross the road anyway because I always have right of way. It's like, no, because if you get hit by a car, you still lose. And so this seems like the same energy Duncan has, like, I'm going to make you use your powers. It's like, yeah, but you won't have a head.
Yeah, I'm going to concussive blast your skull off of your shoulders, dude.
From like 4 feet away, point blank.
But Scott, like I said, to his credit, he's able to blind fight and, able to take him down. Duncan's ready to go back in while holding Scott's glasses, and that's when Rogue and Kitty show up, and Duncan's like, well, fuck you anyway, and kind of tosses the glasses. I'm shocked he tossed the glasses back. It was like, he still could have been like, what was he going to do? Like, not be a dick? He could have still broke them,
Yeah, or stolen them, because those are probably made of like ruby, right? Is that
ruby quartz?
Yeah, so they would be like expensive glasses too.
Yeah, you should have just broken them and sold the pieces. It would have been worth it. There's... they're like walking away, and some random kid decides to taunt Rogue and is like, what are you going to do? Read my mind? It's like, damn, everybody's just going for it. Even this little goober kid who wouldn't be able to win a fight against anybody, let alone somebody who's super powered.
Yeah. And this is also like more to show that no one knows what anyone does.
Yeah.
So there's all kind of assuming. So it's more compounding on that witch hunt kind of.
Right.
Like, oh, you can read witchcraft.
To be fair, any witch that I know in real life can read, so therefore it must be true. You do see Kitty spots Kurt in the distance, still keeping away from everyone. And two kids that Kurt is by, and they're like, don't you like live with those guys? Aren't like in the Institute? And aren't you friends with them? And Kurt's like, well, not anymore. He's like, he literally just sold out his friends on there because he's so scared of losing Normal at that point. And Kitty hears him and kind of is like, what the hell, dude? From his office, Principal Kelly sees and then asks his assistant, I believe her name is Dorothy. I don't know why that's stuck in my head because everybody's named here. I do love that. They like, it feels like a more fleshed out world when everyone has a name. And asks Duncan to come to his office. On the motorcycles, Wolverine and Colossus continue their chase to a farm. And then there's like, this Wolverine goes through the wall because he does another crazy bunny hop, and Colossus just straight up catches the motorcycle and then throws it at him. I love how strong they show Colossus here.
Yeah, and I love the transformation, like busting out of his suit.
Yeah, I think that was actually one of the weaknesses of X-Men 92 is they don't actually show how much stronger he is by comparison to other people. You remember the Marvel trading cards that had power levels on them?
Yeah.
And like Hulk was a 7, Thing and Colossus were a 6, I want to say.
Okay.
So like that's how strong this character is. And like, Captain America is like a 3 or a 4. So that's how much stronger this character is than other people.
Yeah, I guess in 92, Colossus was more like blob in the sense of like he was just stationary and hard.
He was hard to move, and it was him and the Juggernaut, and like we saw Juggernaut like bash through walls, but like this show does a great job of showcasing the magnitude of their power, I feel like. Then they start fighting each other. In Kelly's office, he is talking to Duncan and he's like, oh yeah, I'm aware of that tussle you had. And Duncan tries denying. He's like, no, it's fine. I'm not actually upset with you doing that.
Yeah, he's like, no, encouraging it a little bit more.
And then he's like, you might want to be, a little safer about messing with a mutant. He's kind of like implying the whole, like, if you do this wrong, you're gonna lose your head. Like what we were just alluding to. And Duncan, being as dumb as he is like, I'm not scared. And it's like, you should be.
I guess that goes further with our whole, like, feeling invincible as teenagers thing.
Yeah. And then he starts really planting those seeds like you were alluding to. He mentions that they stick together. And then he sees that the Brotherhood has returned. And he's like, just so you're aware, they also hate Scott Summers. Back at the barn, because apparently it was a very quick fight, Colossus is like not trying to fight Wolverine. He's mostly just, what is it, like judo or something, where you're like, your whole point is just to stop the person from attacking you kind of scenario.
It's like a deflection kind of thing, like you use their energy against them.
Yeah, or I don't know if it's judo or jujitsu or whatever, but he's just like using momentum and dropping Wolverine as opposed to attacking him. And he's, pointing out that he's here to deliver a message. And it's from Magneto of, you're invited to chat with us when you're tired of being prosecuted. And Wolverine's, who has been a lackey before when he's in a brainwashed state, from Department H or the Weapon X program and stuff like that, calls Colossus that. And Colossus is like, I have no choice. He's got enough on me. And I can't help but think it's got to be magic. It's got to be his little sister.
I was going to say, I only know that because you had mentioned before, it's because he has, is it Ilyana?
Yeah.
And so I'm also guessing that she probably doesn't have her powers yet then, right?
Maybe. Or maybe she does, and that's why Magneto's aware of her.
Oh,
also,
so she's not even actually in captivity. He's just like threatening to go there. Got it.
Yeah, I'll make her join if you don't kind of scenario.
Gotcha.
It could, but I doubt it, could also be Peter's brother, Mikhail. But I doubt it because Mikhail has always been a villain. So I don't see that working if we're supposed to have this sympathetic moment for Colossus right here.
Watch it be Gambit.
I don't know about that one, Rod.
I'm just making up shit now.
Yeah. And then Wolverine is like, let us help you, join the X-Men. And Colossus is not making a move for it. So
yeah, he's like, I've seen how you do. You're not that great at defending your space.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't instill me with confidence. You have a pile of rubble where a mansion used to be. So the Brotherhood come back into the school, and as they're walking in, they're cocky like they own the joint. Some kid walks by, accidentally shoulder checks Lance, and he's like, do I look funny to you? And I totally had a Goodfellas moment. It very much felt like, what am I, some sort of clown? Like, I thought it was totally that whole scene with Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta for me.
Gotcha. I actually had a lot of anxiety during the scene. I was like, oh, they're gonna be the ones that fuck this up. And I hadn't even thought about that because Xavier can tell all the X kids not to use their powers, but these three bumblefucks, like they can just walk. I mean, even Blob just walking in doesn't even have to use powers. Like everybody out, his size is his power.
Blob picked up a set of lockers once without trying.
Right.
like literally. In a food fight, almost murdered people, and that was him just being him. That was not powers. That was just,
I guess,
it's Lenny from Of Mice and Men, but in a battle scenario.
Yeah, and same with Toad. He's smelly and is just hopping around. Like, that's just how he moves.
Yeah, the only thing he's not doing is using his spit to, like, melt crap and stuff, so.
Yet.
Over at the basketball court, Jean basically makes every single other player look like shit.
Yeah, this is what I was expecting to happen, was just, like, unfounded accusations.
Right. Well, and they kind of planted the seed slightly in the episode last season where the kids from the New Mutants are playing volleyball, and they blame somebody for using their powers to like be better at the game. And it's like, well, if they're doing it, the non-mutants are especially going to start doing that.
Once again, they're not very specific with it. They're like, you use your powers to make that basket. And it's like, of all the things that I would use this for. Yes, that's the...
But nobody ever noticed how fast Quicksilver was running when he was on that other basketball team. He must have still been that bad at basketball that they're like, I don't care if I can't see him half the time.
Yeah.
The coach benches Jean for existing.
Yeah, well, because I guess she's like you said, she doesn't want to be like also outed, even though she's not a mutant.
Right.
Yeah. She doesn't want to be like a defender of like what, what I mean? Like if she's like, no, she's not a mutant, then, the kid's like,
yeah, she doesn't want to be seen as an ally when the mutants are obviously the enemy. Yeah. But Jean sees Principal Kelly, who's by the trophy case. She goes over, asks what's going on. There were two trophies. I was not sure what was going on for them. They looked like gigantic space helmets, and I did not know what trophy that fucking was.
I didn't see that. I just don't know what trophies look like in general.
They usually look like trophies, Rob.
Yeah, not helmets.
They don't look like helmets. What do you mean you don't know what a trophy looks like?
I was trying to make a joke that I don't win a lot of things.
I mean, we are the generation like right before participation trophies really hit, so.
Yeah.
And she's asking him like, what are you doing? He's like, the school has been plagued with disasters, basically calls them a menace. He mentions the fire, the earthquakes, all this stuff.
Beast.
Yeah, exactly. And then she's getting frustrated, and then he literally pulls the like, I am a fucking male boomer. He's like, oh yeah, your fiery temper, that could be a dangerous combination with your powers. And it's like, I've seen an Instagram reel where a guy has said that unironically right before it was stitched within the last week, I guarantee.
Yeah, and this is something like they made a good point with Jean and being a woman in this situation. But it kind of goes, we haven't done this in a while. Get Out, I'm assuming I guess skip ahead 15 seconds or so if you don't want the spoiler for Get Out. But like the ending of that is like this character goes through all this horrible shit. And then at the very end, the police just catch this black man, attacking a white woman, not knowing that she was trying to cut his brains out for the last 2 hours, It's like, look, obviously he's hot tempered. Principal Kelly, I mean, had he pressed Jean, another hour or so, maybe, and then blamed her for having a hot temper when like no one else is getting that kind of pressure.
Right, like when you keep prodding and prodding and prodding, some people will eventually break, and that's what he was hoping for. Jean does point out that she is in control of her emotions, and Kelly, he doesn't say he's sorry, but he tries to like justify it, where he's like, I have to make sure, or I have a responsibility to make sure that the normal students are kept out of harm's way.
That was another thing. He said something, he made a distinction between mutants and humans.
Yeah.
It wasn't just normal. He was like, we have to protect like the humans against mutants or something. It was like a very choice language there. And I don't know, what do you call that?
It was kind of the opposite of what the president in the previous episode had said, where it was like, talking Americans as mutants and people together. It was like, no, I'm actively separating you two right now.
And I don't know what you call this. There has to be like a psychiatric term for it. It's not false equivalency, but Principal Kelly is like mixing a bunch of truths and bigotry and non-truths in the same conversation and going back and forth between it a lot. So like, I like that he acknowledges like, this school's been plagued with fires and earthquakes and beasts and stuff. He's like, you're not wrong. We were talking about that when the show started. Why is everybody cool with the earthquake almost hitting, like destroying the gym and stuff? And then they weren't. But he's then he's accusing Jean of having a hot temper and like using her powers to win sports. Like that's the most important thing or whatever. And so it's like, those aren't connected, but he's throwing all that out there. So while people are agreeing with one thing, they're going to agree with all the stuff that isn't necessarily true.
Right. The illusory truth effect, I think, no, that's not it. I think it might be as simple as the half-truth.
I guess, yeah. I mean, to me, it's just some parts are completely true. I guess that is kind of still a half. I don't know. But that's what he was doing there. And it was so like, whoever wrote that section, it was so like purposeful, because like, it was rapid fire. It was like some of these politicians do during debates. Like they'll say like 20 things that are true, lace in one thing very untrue, but like very like polarizing.
Yeah.
And then layer in a bunch of other like things that are kind of true, and it's just wild.
Right, because if you say a bunch of stuff that's true, something that's false, and a bunch of other true stuff, you start identifying the falsehood with the things that are true as being accurate.
I guess it's kind of like whatever the conversation or debate version of like the halo effect is, like when I guess if anybody listening doesn't know what that is, like if a celebrity is like being canceled or in controversy, then their publicist will put them in company of like people everyone likes, and so they just kind of absorb that that goodwill. Yeah. So yeah, that was wild. That was a wild scene. There was like a really loaded section that just kind of happened all of a sudden.
Right. At the assembly itself, Xavier is sitting next to Jean, and that's where he decides to ask her to speak at the assembly. And I get you don't want to make this like girl's day way more anxious than it already was. It was probably one of the like top 5 worst days of her entire life. But you probably should have been like, hey, you need to prepare a speech.
Yeah, goes along with the today you're going to go to school. What?
Yeah.
Because you need to be a good example. Like, could we have practiced this?
And then everybody else is not there. They're all outside. They still haven't arrived yet. Kurt is hanging by a back wall by himself, looking like a total little creeper. And as everybody's starting to walk in, Duncan pulls up and he's like ready to fight. And he like just gets right into Scott's face. He's like ready to go for this.
He wants to die.
He really is that stupid. But he wants Scott alone, and of course the X-Men aren't going to abandon another X-Men because it's not X-Men 92 and their name is not Morph, so can't leave them behind.
And he's not a shapeshifter.
It's true. Scott is not a shapeshifter. Scott is many things. Scott is not a shapeshifter.
They only leave shapeshifters behind.
Both Scotts.
Yeah.
So Spike kind of like steps up, and that's when Duncan calls in the Brotherhood. And the Brotherhood is very quick to point out, like, you guys might want to play fair. We don't care. We're going to use our powers.
That's what I thought was going to happen during the school day.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do it, like, literally as soon as they walked in through that front entrance.
Yeah, but this makes so much more sense because this is where the parents are.
It's never about protecting the kids. It's when the parents are in danger. That's when they give a shit. Yeah. We get the start of the fight, kicks off, and Kitty asks, to Lance, is this the real you? And then she's like, you're nothing but a hood. I don't think I have ever heard somebody our age say that phrase. Like, that sounded like a boomer wrote that line. After having such an incredible moment with Jean and the principal, that was the antithesis writing for the episode for me.
I hadn't heard it used in that context before, although now I am cautiously looking up Urban Dictionary.
Oh, by the way, this popped up on the Facebook page. Apparently, peckerwood is a way worse word than we thought it was.
Oh, really? Well, who said that?
Rogue.
Okay.
It was a Southern derogatory term about the equivalent of saying white trash.
Oh, interesting.
And it also had ties to certain, like, gangs that would form inside of prisons.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that.
And I don't remember who the character that she said it about was, because we literally recorded that like 18 months ago. But I saw the screenshot and I was like, I'm just going to look this up before I comment on it. And I was like, hey guys, FYI. And I just took the screen grab and like nobody was fighting me on it or anything like that. It was just like, oh, we learned something today.
I mean, that's good too, to like learn the actual meanings of these things, especially when they technically mean the same thing. I know there's a lot of argument for like stuff changing meanings through the years and stuff, but some stuff is just, if it's unknown, then it keeps the same meaning. They just forgot about it, I just saw a thing from a TikTok creator that I follow that is a Wizard of Oz historian. I guess in the UK, I think that's right. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. The Wizard of Oz is getting an updated rating from everyone to PG.
I mean, they do murder a lot in that.
Yeah, well, it's not because of that. There's a term in it that you can probably look up yourself. I'm not comfortable saying it because I don't know the severity of the slur.
Okay.
But it's in one of the songs that the Cowardly Lion says. And the creator I saw said, like, yes, this is an offensive term. It kind of was let slide for a while because it was, back in the day or whatever. But they're now, the ratings board is acknowledging, like, well, people today, like kids today are watching it. We don't want like them running out to school just saying this thing. And it wasn't common though. I wouldn't have known that unless someone told me that had like ties to that. So I wonder if like the what Rogue said there was another one that was like, yeah, I just didn't know. And most
I thought it was just Southern slang. Yeah.
Kind of similar to, remember when they accidentally made that gay Ken doll back in like the 90s?
Oh, the one with the giant earring and they didn't know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they said that probably what happened was some Mattel people went to a club in LA and they're like, that's cool, right? And just didn't know what it meant and just like literally recreated someone they saw at like a gay bar in WeHo or something.
Right. Well, that was before people even knew it was a gay bar, probably too.
Yeah,
they probably just thought it was a fashionable guy walking down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that reference of hood is used in the way that she used it there, because I just scrolled through like 2 or 3 pages of Urban Dictionary and it's all the things that we think is like a place or that thing that's attached to your sweater.
Right. So I'm also not going to say the word, but if you had me write down every word that I remember from Wizard of Oz, I would not have even written that word down because I don't think I've heard it out of context of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah, is it kind of the like almost 2 or 3 kind of look phrase? Yeah. I didn't know what that was. It's like, okay, interesting. I didn't even remember it was in there, but I thought this was an interesting thing. Like, you don't hear that a lot of stuff like retroactively being changed ratings.
Yep. So Lance doesn't take that name being called to him very well and is like, well, I've never been good enough for you, which to be fair, she kind of has always made that be the case for him.
Yeah, and he hasn't been either.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve it either. So
I just had this epiphany. Did she say that as derogatory term to him specifically because of his dumb helmet?
No, I don't think it was because of the dumb helmet. Because that is not a hood.
I mean, I don't know.
No,
it's not. But it like
hoods are fabric, Rod. And then the fight starts, and it starts by Duncan literally like bulldozing over Scott. Like he just goes hard and goes for it. Yeah. And then Jean gives her speech, and I love that they called out that she wasn't going to do the obvious thing.
Yeah.
Because she says she's not going to quote the 5th and 14th Amendments, which are the right to a trial by jury, and then the 14th is not being able to remove privileges of the citizens of the United States. And then she's like, I could also quote civil rights leaders. And she's like, I'm not going to do that either. I'm going to make it personal. And I think that was the whole, like, let them look you in the eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's right, because we deal with this like in the real world too, of like you're outspoken about something until it's like your kid or your brother or your sister or, you know, something for whatever it is.
Yeah, and she goes into language that is very similar to like when you start hearing people with like anti-LGBT conversations where it's like one of you, the chances are, is going to have a kid who is going to be this. Like, then are you going to want to send them into a place where people are going to hate them? She straight up says people are going to hate them. And as she's hitting some of these points, the fight is going on outside too.
I do like cutting back and forth.
Yeah, cutting back and forth as she's giving the speech. I do like that Scott just drops Duncan like a little bitch. Like it was never a fair fight.
Well, yeah, didn't he actually say? I think it was this fight where Scott even just says they don't need powers to, you know, fight them and stuff. Like Scott is just naturally just stronger and smarter than Duncan anyway.
Yeah,
literally with his eyes closed, he can fight him.
I think that was when it was him and the two like jocks fighting
like
him.
Earlier.
That's when Scott pointed it out. Because I don't think Scott is going to be that overconfident to say he could take on the Brotherhood without powers.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of just, the speech ends with Jean basically being like, be better. Like that's kind of the ongoing theme for, you know, how people need to view mutants of like, yeah, it's genetic. We are what we are. Deal with it. Like we're not your enemies, but you're making us your enemy.
And I like that they kind of implied that everyone just kind of had to sit with it, and then you just have to go home and let it, you know, kind of sink in. So there wasn't like a standing ovation and everyone's hearts were changed in one sitting, you know, kind of thing. It was like, okay, you're gonna have to go home and like look your children in the face and be like, what if when you hit that age, like you start growing fur or spikes or, you know, what's the dumb power?
Controlling the weathers, you know,
controlling weather, or having a beak.
Poor beak, man. And right around that time where she has this strong wrap up, that's when Lance goes complete, like full board, I'm going to quake the shit out of this entire thing. And people begin running, understandably so, because it's New York and there should not be earthquakes in New York.
Yeah, and they know now that all those random earthquakes happened before were because of one of these kids. They don't know.
Or at the very least, they assume it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as that's happening, we just get like a bunch of chaos happening. A tree falls, hits a wire. Another falls, hits the fire hydrant. Cars are exploding. Yeah, it's just like everything is going crazy. And Kelly starts to dogpile and starts blaming the X-Men for it. And Xavier, who has made it outside, is like, actually, you should really pay attention. Who are the ones who are helping people and those who are causing the chaos of all of it?
Once again, to your point, he might be microdosing because he's
way too calm.
He's really calm, but that also helped in that situation.
It did.
Not sounding like an insane person. All the people who were panicking, like just take a beat and like look who's helping and who's hurting.
So Scott saves Duncan as Blob is just throwing cars like a lunatic. Kurt saves a couple by teleporting them. Jean uses her telekinesis to save somebody. And then Kitty saves the principal by grabbing him just in time with the intangibility so he doesn't get just turned into paste.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, the Brotherhood is seeing that the X-Men are now using their powers. And if they use their powers, they know they're going to get trounced because they're also outnumbered right now. So they take off.
It's such a fragile premise to go into a fight. Like, you said you're not going to use your powers. Now we can beat you. It's like, that was what you're counting on.
Yeah, at some point, if you start winning and murdering people, they're going to turn their powers back on. And then there's a little bit of like, oh, well, now you could show yourself, Kurt. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm still going to keep DL right now.
I like how he just denied it. They didn't want to give that satisfaction of that like happy ending.
Yeah, like, you know, just they showed he had the powers, but they didn't want to show he was blue.
Yeah, but also we're not sure who saw him.
Well, at least that one family did.
Yeah. Or I think they could have. They probably didn't. But if they want to argue that he was like behind them and they just didn't know what happened, then maybe. Right. But like, like Kitty's like, yeah, you can come out now. He's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. So it looks like it's the next morning. Wolverine is returning and he sees all the kids kind of like walking into the room and they're all sad. Like everybody's just sad sack depressed. And it starts off with Xavier saying how he's very proud of them. Mm-hmm. And they're like, but we used our powers. We did what we weren't supposed to. I don't know if this version of Xavier is just like hoping that the kids all defy him, because they always make the better decisions when they actually don't listen to him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But they find out that, you know, they're going to be welcomed back to the school. And then I don't know if I like watched it wrong or something, but it felt like they weren't happy that they got accepted back in.
Yeah, I got that sense too, but also it made sense that they wouldn't be happy about it. They're like, well, they voted us back in, but are we welcome?
Right. Yeah. And Xavier's like, you know, it's the first step. It's an honor. And that's where I think it was like, oh, okay, you're laying it on too thick, Chuck. Yeah, we're going to be representatives of what this coming future is, but calling it an honor when, to your point, like they're like, yeah, we barely got invited back into the school. What are you talking about?
And they're kids and they weren't prepared or had a choice. I guess they were prepared and they were trained, but they didn't have a choice. Like they didn't get to say like, okay, in a week, we're going to do this or something. They just kind of like, well, it's either that or run forever.
Right. And they're not good at running. We've seen they just end up in caves and the big screen ICE TV gets ruined and everything like that. And then it ends on like kind of like one of those like feel good statements, which maybe it's just because it's Xavier delivering it. And I don't like this version of Xavier that much of he's like, you know, it's time to endure in the face of bigotry. And it was just like, the kids aren't happy about this still, dude. Like it was feel good for him. It was not feel good for them. So,
yeah. Because he obviously he's a mutant, but once, you know, you mentioned before, like he's one of the ones that can kind of pass if you didn't know him already. He's also like older and has like, he's been preparing. That's his goal. And
I would also bet that even though he's the guy that runs the Institute of Mutants, since he's in his wheelchair, I guarantee that people underestimate him because of that and assume he's not a mutant because of it.
Or like not a powerful one. At the very least. They're like, well, what does this guy do, you know?
Well, I mean, if the girls are going to assume that Jean is just winning at basketball arbitrarily because she has powers, like, wouldn't you assume that the all-powerful mutants could make themselves walk, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah, that whole statement, I was actually talking to a friend a couple of days ago at an event where it's kind of funny, but also kind of serious. Like, I was in the middle of all this stuff on TikTok a year or so ago. In the midst of all the Stop Asian Hate stuff, there was like the Celebrate Asian or AAPI Excellence. Right. I was like, that's great. Can we also celebrate AAPI mediocrity? Because being excellent is hard. And I want to be able to make shitty things too. Like, there's a bunch of like, you know, Caucasian shitty movies out there. Can we make a fraction of those as well? You know, Michelle Wolf actually talked about that before Wonder Woman came out, the first one. She was like, there's too much pressure on this movie. It has to do how much? For them to do another female-led superhero movie? Like, you know how many bad male-led superhero movies there were? And we just let them keep making? How many hangovers are they going to make? Like, can you imagine if Bridesmaids had that kind of pressure on them? But then they made like 4 hangovers? Like,
it's true.
So anyway, doesn't always have to be excellent. Celebrate mediocrity.
Yeah, let's be okay with mediocrity and end the toxic positive bullshit.
Yeah.
So that's how we're going to end this episode. Ending toxic positive bullshit. So
yeah, actually, that is also advice from Katie Morton.
I was very happy when I saw that post from Katie. I fully support her on that stuff. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Katie Morton does mental health commentary, and I don't know if you'd actually call it advice, but just talks about mental health on her YouTube and her Instagram. And it is the 6 phrases I would love to hear people stop saying. Yeah. And I agree with every single fucking one of them, dude. I hate those phrases so much. So.
It's also nice because she's a licensed therapist. She's also a realistic person.
Yes.
Because she I don't know what she's doing these days, but back when I'd met her, she was like specifically in the YouTube creator space. And any other therapist would say, stop doing this. Like, this industry. But, you know, she's like, well, you're here. So how can we realistically function within this chaos?
And the answer is poorly for most of us, but she gives great advice and perspective within it. So, closing thoughts, Rod?
Love the episode, especially because they dealt with a lot of heavy matter, I think, pretty elegantly. And the parallels were very thinly veiled, if at all, but also seem very relatable, I think. I say I think because I feel like there's a lot of people who just still don't get the X-Men. But I think this was the clearest that you could possibly get. And if someone doesn't see it in this, they're just never going to get it.
Well, especially like you pointed out, the scene reminiscent of Ruby Bridges is just like...
Or any desegregated school at that time. Like, it's a one-to-one.
Yeah. But the people who are saying X-Men became woke, watch this fucking episode.
Right.
Literally 22 years ago from right now, Disney did not turn shit woke. Let's be real.
Yeah. And just go ahead and get your Friends of Humanity swag. Just lean into it if that's what you're going to be.
There was one person who was like, is it offensive if I do a Friends of Humanity cosplay? And it's like, it really depends on the context of that cosplay, man.
I think I saw that thread, and I liked one person who's like, you probably can, but like, also, why would you? It's the most boring costume. I was like, that's the good answer.
Well, it's like when there was the not Deadpool outfit on Ryan Reynolds in the first Wolverine movie, and somebody's like, I'm going to cosplay that at Comic-Con, and I saw it, and it was like, you're just a dude in a red t-shirt right now. Thank you guys for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram post about this episode. We are in there. We are in the comments. And by we, I mean usually me. Rod is in TikTok, but I tell him when you guys talk about him in the episodes. On our recent episodes, somebody mentioned that, Rod, they too were not allowed to watch Married with Children growing up. So you have a bond with one of our listeners from that alone.
You're the other person, because I feel
there's
like
only two of you.
Else. Yeah, everyone else got to watch that show.
And if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating, hopefully a 5-star rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and CastBox. When this comes out, we are literally just days away.
Yep, one more week.
One more week.